Good afternoon, everyone. We will call House Taxation meeting to order. As always, first item of business would be requests for bill introductions. If there are none, I guess I have one. It's kind of a medical bill, even though this is tax, but I'd like to welcome Representative Bill Clifford to Tax Committee. So he's sitting in for Representative Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be quiet.
You don't fit in tax then. If there are no requests for bill introductions, we will move on to our first item of business. That is a hearing on House Bill 2485. And I would turn to the revisor's office for an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2485 would provide for a sales tax exemption for purchases made by an organization that has student members and that contracts with a school operated by a school district. If the sales raise money for the organization to benefit the member students of the organization, I will state that the bill will likely need a technical amendment. When I was drafting the bill, I envisioned that the language would encompass the intent of the requester. I don't believe it fully grasps it, only a few minor tweaks. So instead of contracting, it'll be more of an agreement with the organization. I have language prepared, but so just throw that out there for a technical amendment if the bill does proceed forward.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions for the revisor? Seeing none, thank you. Kathleen, would you like to address the fiscal note for Department of Revenue?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. At this time, the Department of Revenue believes that House Bill 2485 would have no fiscal effect on the state or local tax revenues, as we are unaware of any student organization that could possibly qualify under the exemption as it is written at this point.
Okay, so the technical amendment that the revisor may bring forward, would that potentially open it up to where, I mean, I'm not sure how you would estimate how many organizations could be out there that would be eligible.
I haven't seen the technical amendment, but if it's what I think that it is, we did get some information from the Department of Education that we would be able to estimate probably with that information that they've given us.
Okay, all right, thank you. Committee, are there any questions for Department of Revenue? Seeing none, thank you, Kathleen. This time we will open up proponent section of testimony and welcome first to committee Representative Alcala. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, I wanted to see if everybody looked better from up here than they did from over there. Some of you do. I support HB 2485. This will provide tax exemption on sales made by school-operated and/or sponsored organizations. This would allow more funding to be kept where it can directly benefit students and their extracurricular activity. I would strongly encourage the committee to expand the organizations that would qualify for this tax exemption. Without going through the list, I'll just give you a few: cheerleading, pep squads, pep clubs, drill teams, clubs of art, computer, history, music, language, sports, and science, ROTC, student council, student government. I would strongly urge the committee to work HB 2485. And there is a technical amendment, and what it would do is, I know you're not looking at the bill, but there's on line 33, it has student members in the contracts with would be stricken from the bill, and it would be replaced with operates with agreement with or is sponsored by. So then that would qualify those organizations to be exempt. Any questions?
Thank you. Representative Corbett.
So, Representative, there's two questions I guess I have. So would like 4-H qualify for this? It'd be an organization for.
So my understanding is if there is a organization that would go and raise funds for it and they're part of the students of the school, they would qualify. That's my understanding of it.
And there's no age limit mentioned in your bill.
No, there's not.
Thank you.
Representative Turner?
And they're an organization that mostly works with schools, so they would qualify. If I'm wrong, I would revise it and jump in.
Would the revisor care to weigh in on that?
I apologize. I was in the middle of something else. If the organization is any related to me, as long as they operate with the agreement, or would be basing this off the technical amendment, not off the underlying bill, if they would operate with the agreement or sponsored by the school, they would qualify. If there was a request about age, it would have to be for any organization, that would be a school operated by a school district. So it would be limited to those
Students, okay. Representative Turner and then Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a question, Representative. I'm not tracking on the technical change there. So when the DOR came up, there was no fiscal note on this. And now with the changed language that you just read, does that put some fiscal notes on this, or where are we at? Thank you.
Actually, it was my fault because I didn't explain well what I was looking for. But with the technical amendment, it would be about a 3.0, help and chime in if I'm wrong, 3.0 million, $3 million.
I vote no.
$3 million negative. And also there was another component. I'm trying to find it here. Give me a second. I thought it was a 0.05 to the highway fund. And Kathleen can correct me if I'm wrong.
So 3 million and a portion of that's highway fund. Is that
No.
what I understand?
3 million
Plus.
plus a
A highway fund.
0.05 to the highway fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on this agreement, it would be an agreement between these clubs and organizations and who, and would it need to be a signed agreement?
So I would say currently most organizations that work with the school that raise funds for them have those agreements. So my understanding is that that would be left up to the school district, and there would have to be students to be involved in that.
And would there would be a signed piece of paper?
I do not have an answer for you on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would this be all the items that those clubs buy? Because some of my clubs that do those things, they buy items to, like, they stripe parking lots and things like that.
It would be anything that would raise funds for the extracurricular activities. Like right now, PTAs, PTOs, they're exempt, so they can do this. But a lot of these other a lot of these other organizations that want to raise funds can't do that.
Well, I was going to say, if it's just food, we're not going to have to worry that when we take the sales tax off food, we'll be able to accomplish that without having to work on that. Just thought I'd mention that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Prael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. FFA, they would be covered, I would assume, under this too?
Yes.
Okay. They just weren't listed, and I just wanted to.
Well, so let's verify that. Can I verify that with the?
Certainly.
My understanding was yes, but I don't want to tell you that and not.
There are some school activities that are already exempt from the sales tax. The Department of Education provides kind of a guidance document to school districts on this topic, and Future Farmers of America happens to be one that is already exempt. But I believe it is in your packets, that guidance that KSDE provides to school districts to help them better understand what organizations are exempt and non-exempt under current law. This would, in essence, be expanding that list.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you, sir. So one organization that we have in some of our rural counties, it's called Scholastic Clays. or they have shooting teams sponsored by the school. I just checking with the revisor if they would be covered on
My
that.
understanding that it would be covered, but I get the official,
Because they have to be sponsored through the school.
I mean, assuming they would have operate with an agreement or is sponsored by the school district, that would also, if the sales raise money for an organization to benefit the member students of the organization. So if they meet those criteria, yes, conceivably they would be covered.
That's sweet.
Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative, some of the organizations in some districts, school districts rule, sometimes will buy a gun and then use raffle tickets or something, proceeds of that for saying, would that be tax exempt?
I would tell you, any curricular activity, anything that would be in support of any of those organizations, and my understanding is that it would be exempt.
Okay, thank you.
I know we're using the gun component, but it's no different than candy bars and anything else that would raise fund for extracurricular activity for the students.
Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I'm new to tax, the use of the word exempt means the local entities would not tax these things either.
The organizations that work with the school district to raise the funds.
So counties and cities would not apply their sales tax.
No, I do not believe they would.
With the word exempt, I don't believe they could.
Yes, and to clarify with the revisor, if it is exempt, the organization is exempt, they don't pay any of the state, city, county, any local sales tax.
And a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, parents groups, like a parent and booster group, similarly exempt.
My understanding is the way that it was written was that most organizations that work with school to raise funds, I don't know if the counties or cities are in that component or not, but to me, they weren't part of the bill. And then your second question was?
Parent groups, like a band booster, a group of only parents, not
parent
students.
groups that will raise funds for extracurricular activity would be exempt for whatever was purchased for those.
Thank you.
That's my understanding. Don't be afraid to jump in, guys, if
Thank you, Mr.
I need to be corrected.
Would the revisor like to weigh in on that?
Maybe just a touch. Just a step back, this exemption applies for sales made by the organization. I think I misspoke earlier. So any sales made by these organizations would qualify as part of the requirement of the bill. The organization would have to have student members and that benefit the students. So I'm not sure a parent organization would qualify.
So this is limited just to sales, not necessarily purchases that these clubs would make, whether or not they were making those for resale or consumption or just use within the group.
That's correct. My understanding was the original intent was for fundraising. And so when they sell things similar to cookies or popcorn or things like that, to raise money, that those sales would be exempt from collection of sales tax.
Okay. Representative, I want to just take a little bit different route here. When we look at this as it is right now before this bill, who is collecting and remitting it? Is it the organization that collects it and remits it? They have the sales tax license and they're submitting the sales tax, or is it the school that is collecting it?
So I would tell you that I should have the answer to that question. I don't. This bill was brought to me by a group of constituents within my district. I thought it was a good idea. One of the proponents that's speaking after me can answer that for you because he's one of the ones that leads groups that help do fundraising.
Okay. But I know how it works in my area. A lot of these organizations that come in, the student organizations, they go ahead and pay the sales tax when they purchase the goods. And then when they make the subsequent sales, since the tax has already been paid, it's tax free at that point. So this might change the dynamic there to where each club could register for the sales tax exemption and they wouldn't have to pay that or charge for the sales tax. So, Representative Wassinger.
Just based on what I had to do when I worked and volunteered at the high school, you had to get a paper from the school to get a tax exemption when you went to buy things. Otherwise, could try to go through the school and show them what you paid, but it was, most of the time they'd be like, too bad, you should have gotten this exemption sheet ahead of time. So I think a lot of it just gets paid without any kind of reporting, so.
Did you have any idea this would be such a conversational?
Well, no, it's new to me too. So, but the concept and the idea was good, and I figured we'd get it worked out if it was a bill that we would end up working.
Sure. Committee, are there any further questions for this conferee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for letting us have the hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Now, I also showed Dan Carson, and he's joining us via WebEx. Are you there, Dan?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Very good. First, I'd like to thank Representative Alcala for bringing this to your attention, and thank the members of the committee for this time. And I apologize for not being a little bit more organized. We actually just came back from a trip, and I literally threw on a nice clean shirt to be on here today. So I appreciate your patience. I wrote an email to Representative Alcala, and I'm not sure if you have a copy of it. It's just an email that I had sent to him that kind of explains what it is that that we're trying to do. I've done this for over 30 years, and quite honestly, I don't have a dog in the hunt on this. I mean, it's not something that benefits me personally, but I've worked with thousands and thousands of students helping them raise money, and there's just been so much money that comes from students' accounts. And many of you have mentioned FFAs and like FCCLAs and DECAs. Those are all tax exempt right now. And so if they purchase goods for fundraising, that is all exempt. There are other student-led type organizations, things like that, that do have to pay sales tax on that. So if they're raising money for a trip, if they're doing that sort of thing. And by the way, someone else mentioned something, it's not quite right. The sales tax on fundraising goods are paid on the retail amount. Okay, so if it's not like, for example, I sell just a wide variety of different types of things. I sell cookie dough and world's finest chocolate and all kinds of different types of things. When let's say that a music group would like to do this, they sell the retail price on the chocolate bars, which is $1. I know we've all bought $1 candy bars. They make profit on the 50 cents, but they don't pay the 50 cents for the bar and pay sales tax on that. They actually pay $1 because it's based on the retail. Does that make sense? So I'll give you an example. I'm working with a group right now in elementary school where they have a really great principal, and he's raising money for school. It's going to go towards state testing and incentives and things like that. There's also some other kinds of things. They're going to do a supplemental reading program at the school. This principal is not getting paid to do fundraising projects, but he's doing it because he believes in his kids and his teachers. And so they're going to raise about $10,000 selling chocolate bars. And they'll have to sell about $20,000 in chocolate to make $10,000. But since he is not a PTO or a PTA organization, he'll be taxed on the $20,000. So just simple math, I know state sales tax isn't 10%, but if it was 10%, $2,000 of his profit, so instead of making $10,000, he's only going to make $8,000 because he has to pay $2,000 in profit. Does it make sense?
You may not be able to see us, but we're all nodding our heads. Yes.
Okay.
that example does help clarify. Yes.
Okay. And also, someone had mentioned what grade levels. I'm okay with anything. My main focus is pre-K through 12, just because that's where most of the student sales come from.
Does that complete your testimony, sir?
It does.
Okay. Committee, are there any questions for this conferee? Representative Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my question is, you gave that example of the dollar candy bar that we've all bought, and that money, as I understand it, you get 50 cents and the organization raising funds gets 50 cents. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that was correct up until about 3 months ago. And now it's 45% profit, but chocolate bars are 50%. They were 50%. They are now 40%.
And the organization pays the tax out of their 50 cents on that. Is that accurate?
Correct.
That
is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Schmidt.
So I'm trying to get this straight. If an organization, if they just buy wholesale a bunch of candy bars, are they paying sales tax when they buy those candy bars?
They are not.
If it's a school-based organization, they are not, correct?
No, the bookkeeper, and I work with many bookkeepers in schools. The bookkeepers are all trained to take the sales tax out of the retail amount of whatever they bring in.
Okay, so they buy it without paying sales tax. Then when they sell it, they currently pay sales tax on the proceeds.
On the retail amount, correct.
On the retail amount. Okay. Thank you.
Committee, are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Committee, I show no other proponents, neutral or opponent testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to appear on 2485? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on 2485. Now, committee, I'll give you a few moments. I'd like to take action on House Bill 2571. And while you're collecting your information, I would look to the revisor's office to give us a quick reminder on what 2571 does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2571 would allow for an individual to only be required to pay sales or use tax on the difference in the price of a vehicle when an individual sells a vehicle and then purchases a vehicle within 180 days. And also individuals could either provide the county treasurer the bills of sale at the time of vehicle registration or apply to the Department of Revenue for a refund. So there'd be kind of two mechanisms.
Thank you for that overview. And committee, what are your wishes with House Bill 2571? Representative Turner.
I recommend HB 2571 favorable for passage.
Thank you. We have a motion. Second, Representative Sanders.
A second.
Discussion. Representative Turner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to kind of, I know the language in the original bill was a little muddy, so we've made some amendments to clarify some of that. So basically, there was a question earlier about is it subsequent? So the word subsequent has been taken out. So the answer to the question is you can sell your car, and then within 180 days, if you buy a car, you'll be paying the net tax on those transactions. Or if you do it the other way and
do you have an amendment to pass out?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to. I have an amendment.
We'll get it all passed out, and then we can explain the amendment. Yep. Okay, it looks like everyone has a copy of the amendment, and I'll let you to go ahead and proceed to explain the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So speaking to the amendment, there were some questions about the word subsequently, so that's been taken out. So again, whether you sell your car and then buy another one within 180 days, or buy a car and sell your old one within 180 days, either way, That's the 180-day window, and you would be paying the net difference. You'd be paying tax on the net difference between the old and the new, assuming that the one you buy is of more value than the old, but you can't get a credit if it's the other way around. So, so we cleaned up the language here just to make that clear. And so that first bubble talks about that it is the amount that exceeds the amount that you receive from the sale of the old. So it has to be a gain. You can't get a credit for buying a cheaper car than your old car. And so that language is clarified in the first three bubbles there. And the next bubble basically just speaks to the fact that there needs to be either use of an existing form, which is a bill of sale form TR 312, which was revised in 2021, or if they have access to pull that form easily. If they don't, they can develop their own bill of sale, but they need to include the key fields, and those are listed here. And then it goes on to say that the bill of sale must match the assignment of title. So in other words, this gets to the point that we discussed when I originally presented, which is today there are a lot of one-sided transactions on the registration of vehicles because there's no counterparty to them. So here, if I were to sell someone my car, I would give that person that bought my car the title, and on the back we fill it out and we put the sales price, and that sales price has to match the bill of sale that I, as the seller, keep and give to the Department of Revenue to get my credit for my transaction. Does that make sense? So those two numbers need to match. So that's what that third bubble is there, the large bubble. And then it says that you have, the last one there is that you have within 3 years from the date of the purchase of the replacement car to file to get your refund. That's that one. And the last one just says that the Director of Motor Vehicles can prescribe forms, because there will be additional forms. Those exist. As you look at Missouri, they have the form that's pretty clear, and I've used it before. That just, you provide the receipt for the purchase and the bill of sale. So it's a fairly straightforward process, and it is auditable. The amounts must match. And the language is in there about that. And lastly, I think a question that came, and I believe it was Representative Kessler asked me about the fiscal note at the time. The Department of Revenue wasn't able to give a fiscal note on it. And since then, they've looked to Missouri, and Missouri's given them what their impact is. And ratcheting that for Kansas came out to, I believe it was 2.4, but they do boats, trailers, and other vehicles over there. So taking that out, conservatively, I'd say it's a $2 million fiscal note for this particular bill. But if you remember, that post-audit study that was done back in 2003 indicated that because people don't have a counterparty to sales, often they're underreporting the value of those vehicles, and they assessed that to be about a $7 to $13 million item. So this may be an actual winner. So I think I incorrectly answered the representative's question when he said, could this potentially create more savings than the actual cost of the bill? And I do believe that's likely the case. So a rare situation. And with that, I'll sit for questions.
Okay. First of all, committee, do we have a second on the Turner Amendment? Representative Helgerson for the second, and discussion. Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know whether this is for the carrier of the amendment or the reviser, but we've taken out the term subsequently. Does that clear that up to it can be prior or after? Does that make that clear now?
I'll open it up to whichever one wants to address that question. Mr. Siebers.
In my mind, it does, because there's no longer kind of the conjecture that subsequently, means prior to. So it's just a sale and then another sale. There's not quite the same issue that I saw before.
Thank you for that. I will take your name when and use it when they come to see me.
Representative Kelly.
Just a question on what is the 3-year period to claim the credit? Does that match what's in Missouri? Or it seems like a long time to go without claiming the credit.
Chairman? Yes, it does match what's in Missouri, and it's a lot of time to claim the credit. I can tell you of an instance for somebody in Missouri that, as I was researching this, didn't realize that this was an option for them. Unfortunately, it was still within that 3-year window, so they could apply and get their money for it. So I don't think it's there for purposes of procrastination. I think it's there for purposes of given amount of time for people to realize that there's an availability and to make that good. So 3 years is the number. Yes, matches Missouri. Thank you.
Representative Turner, I noticed that we took out the notary part of this. Do you want to address that briefly?
Yes, that was in there originally. My thought was that does add, it says here's this person and I vouch that these are the two people and they're signing this document. But for some folks, that creates an additional burden. And I didn't see, as I did additional work on this, I didn't see that burden. In other words, if you're selling a car in your driveway, both of you would have to go to somewhere where there's a notary and execute the transaction. By inserting the language, and what I saw in other states is, there's just pretty clear language there that this is, I don't know if it says it's a crime, but it's required that these numbers be blah, blah, blah. So I didn't see that the incremental burden that would put on regular folks to conduct a transaction was worth the additional value that we couldn't accomplish just through language on the forms.
Any further questions, committee? Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Turner, just a question of clarification. So the 180 days, the sale and the purchase have to take place within 180 days, either way.
Yes.
But one could do that and then wait up to 3 years to apply for the refund. Am I correct?
Yes, you could realize 2 years later, you know what, I never did apply for that refund, and you could still do that up to 3 years from the time that you purchased the replacement vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Corbett.
Representative Turner, one question for you. Are you sure you like this bill because it seems pretty tax friendly? We hardly ever see anything like this in this committee, so I'm giving you one more chance to think about it.
All right, let me see if I can't come up with a few more amendments. I'm surprised, but all right.
Maybe
yes, and I do think this is a pretty easy proposition. I mean, this appeals to folks of all everybody. I mean, I don't care if you're low on the economic poll or high on the economic poll or what your political leanings are. Everybody benefits by this, and it's just really making accessible to everyone something that exists only in a specific instance right now, and there's really no need for that. But I appreciate the comment. Yeah, it is a rare thing. As someone else, I think, went to the podium on the floor and said it's a rare win-win opportunity.
Representative Helgerson, no? Any further discussion? Representative Kelly.
The only thing that I can think on having the notary would even though you say it could be a crime, it does put some legitimacy on it that the two of them signed it at the same time. And the guy that realizes at 2 years and 6 months that he doesn't have it creates a form and does both signatures, or he has a spouse do one of the signatures, and it just seems like there's some legitimacy that a notary gives, and you have to do them on so many financial transactions and others that it can be a pain, but still it does give you something you've never had before, and it might be worth a notary on it.
Seeing no further questions, Representative, you can close on your amendment.
Thank you. to the point of the previous representative, I was trying to find the language real quick, but with all the bubbles, it's a little hard. But it does say that such bills of sale need to be presented. In order to qualify for this deduction, you have to present documents and they have to match. So there will be, when the DOR does the design within the system, of course, it will look for a match. And unless there matches, then you've got a problem. So in your scenario of 2 years later, you draw it up and have your son sign it and don't come up, it has to have the same sale value in order to be valid. So that's really what was hoped to be accomplished with the notary, is just to say, you both are here and you're signing this document. So I understand your point, but I think, as I weighed things, I think it came out as not worth the burden that it was putting on some folks. So, but thank you. And with that, I close on the amendment.
Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Turner to amend. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment passes. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion? Representative Gardner.
I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, but I'm fine with the bill, Representative. I'm just wondering, since it's a new program, that we might ought to take a look at it down the road and see if it's working. And, I've been on that situation this year. I've been bringing that up. So I'm just now wondering, a conceptual amendment might be a sunset on this, to take a look at it in X amount of years. I don't know what your thought would be.
Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My thought is, that 2003 post audit, I don't know if other representatives had the opportunity to read it, but I think it's time for a refresh of that. I mean, there were some fairly significant findings there in terms of the handling of the sales tax dollars that go into dealerships, and other things. And that would bring out, whether this is actually netting a more accurate value on private sales. So whether I'm less in favor of a sunset, I guess, because I think this is something that's being done. I think there's not a lot of fuzzy logic or fuzzy numbers here, but I do think that would substantiate the fact that more accurate reporting results from this. So,
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, I agree with. I haven't looked at the 2003 LPA audit, but it might be, and I don't have a problem. Have you? May I ask? Have you asked for an LPA audit?
Can I speak to that? Yes. No, I have not yet, but I saw the email come out the other day asking for ideas. Right. And that's the one that came to mind, since this is something I've been working with. And I know we heard Mr. McNeely from the auto say after that they did try and enact some, go into a black book valuation, and it became very cumbersome, so they abandoned that. But so I think we're right back to where we were when that audit was done. And I think this brings a corrective opportunity, and I would certainly think a post audit would be in line.
Okay. I'm fine, Mr. Chairman.
I was just going to suggest, rather than go into the time and expense of an LPA, if we wanted to simply just have a report back to the legislature on that after 3 years. We've done that before too. That would give us a chance to analyze that, if that's an amendment that somebody would want to propose. Representative Corbett.
This is to the representative. How long has Missouri been doing this without any problems?
I've got their statute here. I'd have to look at the date on it. So I don't, does the revisor happen to remember that? I know we looked at, I don't know the date on it, but it's been
more than 5 years
since I lived over there, and that's been much more than 5 years.
Representative Highland.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for the conceptual amendment of report to the tax committees, Senate and House, in 3 years.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second on that? Representative Woodard. And discussion on the Highland amendment. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this report, how do we, if I understand the representative correctly, how do we put a number on underreporting? Because that's kind of the underlying issue here, is to actually raise more revenue because of underreporting. How do we put that underreporting and analyze that and see if we raise that bar?
Yeah, I don't, and maybe Kathleen would be able to speak to this a little bit, but a report to the legislature would just show how many of the refunds were granted. I don't know that there's a way that without a post audit that you'd actually be able to, I think it would even be difficult for post audit to determine that underreporting. So, Representative Turner.
Well, thank you. I was going to ask, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask much the same question. Is the proposal that was made suggesting to do just a part of what was done in that post audit? And that post audit actually went out to sample 80 transactions that maybe they got, I don't remember if they went to the treasurer and just pulled 80 registrations, you know, and then they looked at the NADA value to say, wow, these things are way below the NADA. So is that the suggestion? Is the reporting would be some kind of a mini post audit, or is it just the one side of saying this many cars came? Because that's only going to give us one half of the picture of the dollars that will go out in refunds, but it won't tell us, you know, the people are reporting more accurate value. So that's my question to the presenter or the proposer.
Representative Highland.
My vision is that when they come and report, they'll tell us what the difference is between this year and the next 3 years, how many refunds they made, and that kind of information to see if it's working or not is simple.
Right, but that would be only half of the equation. To say that we're giving out these refunds gives you part of it, but it's not telling you the part that was found in the post audit, which is that people are underreporting private registrations. But anyway, whatever the committee chooses, I'm just curious of that.
Well, that's a post audit request, which is different.
Any further discussion? Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did read the post audit report with Mr. Turner, and there were a lot of things in there that need to be redone. I think I don't know if we want to necessarily put it in this bill, but I do think that we ought to, if we do, and I'm okay with the bill, but I think we do need to redo that 2003 audit because there were a lot of concerns in there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion on the Highland amendment? Seeing none, do you want to close or we can just go ahead and vote?
I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Highland to amend. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Turner, you may close.
I close.
Okay. Committee, those in favor of recommending House Bill 2571 favorable for passage as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. The next item I'd like to take a look at is House Bill 2682. And while the committee is getting the documents together for that, I'd look to the reviser for a reminder on what that bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2682 involved the city of Latham in their election for sales tax authority. They held an election on November 2nd of 2021. Pursuant to statutes, they're required 21 days prior to the election is required for a notice to be published. Apparently their notice got published on 20 days. The sales tax would have been an amount of 0.5% to provide public services by the city of Latham. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, are there any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, Representative Blex for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move when the committee considers House Bill 2682 that they pass this out with favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Representative Helgerson for a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, you may close.
Thank you. I close, and Representative Corbett suggested if we pass this that I get a menu of the Silver Saddle Saloon so you guys can take credit for this. So
no, there was a phone that went off over here earlier. Maybe they can all get us some.
Yeah, we could all go down there, I'm sure. Thank you. I close.
Okay. Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Blex. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Committee, that concludes our business for the day. Is there anything for the good of the committee? Seeing none, have a great weekend. We are adjourned.